We're going to have a little conversation with Joe, and Joe is a licensed arborist, and Joe can tell you a lot about some safety things and just how-tos that go along with having a chainsaw. And you know, really, even though they're consumer grade and they're sold for use around the house, there are some things that you really ought to know before you crank one of these things up and go attack the closest tree in your backyard. So Joe, some of the basic safety elements of a chainsaw, what should people check before they crank this thing up and go to work?
First thing you want to check would be to make sure the chain brake is engaged. And on this, it's right here. So
okay.
You typically want to just roll your wrist to lock it so you don't shove your hand forward into a possibly moving chain.
Right.
So I'd always check that first thing before. Then I'd check to make sure you got a good tension on the chain. You don't want it too loose or too tight. A good amount of tension would be where you could lift it up to where you could maybe slide a penny under there.
Okay, underneath the teeth and the blade itself, the bar?
Yes.
Okay.
If it's too loose, it could pop off and
fly off.
possibly cause an injury. And
right.
They usually have a chain catch built into them, but I don't want to take the risk, so I always check it before I start it.
Right.
If it's too tight, it just won't roll right and might overheat and won't lubricate properly.
Yeah, okay. I've always kind of figured there was probably a knack to getting a limb to fall the right direction, which would be away from me, whichever I would be working. You know, I'm assuming that that's probably something people have got to pay attention to.
Yeah, you want to pay attention to the lean of the tree, or possibly, I mean, if you're taking down a whole tree, if it's a branch, you want to kind of use the direction and gravity in your favor, and you know, watch out for things below you. Oftentimes, you can cut a notch into the limb or tree, and that can help direct it. That's kind of an advanced technique, but
personal protective gear when you're working with a chainsaw, what's the bare minimum people ought to do?
Bare minimum, you want to have eye protection and ear protection. They make a lot of noise and they kick a lot of dust or particles up. A lot of times you might even want to get a pair of chaps. They make special safety chaps that will bind up the blade if you come into contact with your legs or whatever. That's usually for using a bigger saw, doing groundwork, but
right.
Hey, it never hurts to have extra safety equipment. You want to always use two hands so you can stay in control. Oftentimes the saw has potential to kick back if you run into a bind or something, and you know, you never want to cut above your shoulders or your head. That's a no-no.
Okay.
So.
Are chainsaws, if you take care of them, if you pay attention to the things you mentioned, you check the tension, you know how the thing operates, are they typically fairly safe for people to use if they're paying attention?
I would say so, but you got to pay attention and use it properly, just like anything. I mean, I'm sure a fork could be dangerous if you use it wrong.
If you eat too fast, you can probably put an eye out with a fork.
That's right.